Welcome to the Echo Essentials podcast.
I'm Dave Dale.
And I'm Scott Clark. Dave, good to have you in the studio. I want to give you some good news because I only come sharing good news. I was in No Frills on the weekend, and as I was going down an aisle, this woman stops, turns around, she goes, "Scott Clark!" She puts her arms out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Right? I don't recognize her, and that's fine. I usually don't recognize people, and she says, "I watched your podcast." And then she said, very loud, the next thing she said, "You know what? I think I'm starting to like Dave Dale." And then I started laughing. Now, the other thing is like she said it quite loud. It wasn't like, it didn't matter who was around or whatever, but it looks like people are starting to like you, a very unlikable guy, and we're turning this ship around slowly.
Yeah, well, I think you probably have a pretty small sample size of the people that like me, but
no,
okay.
I got a pretty good sample. I got a pretty good sample of people.
I have 51% of the people I know like me, 49% don't, and that's a perfect way to go about things.
Is that the perfect balance?
I think so.
So why do you think? Because I don't think you're like this super public guy. Why would you think there are some people that you've rubbed the wrong way? Well, all through your columns?
I've written a lot of columns, hundreds of columns, and I probably have a sense of humor that isn't always appreciated. It's a little snide, a little sarcastic, quite often pointed. Mm-hmm. And I'm no doubt I said something in the past about somebody she knew or herself or a belief she had and made fun of it. I like to make fun of it. I like to make fun of myself too. Right.
So if we went back to, let's say, the journalism days, Jennifer McCharles, would Jennifer McCharles have the same sort of reaction? Because I don't think Jennifer did columns, right? She just reported news.
No, I don't think she has written columns, but she uses her social media as a bit of a personal opinion outlet. Is
it because you write a column that it divides people in some ways? So most journalists wouldn't have that same sort of...
Yeah, that's probably the case. Well, although they'd have detractors themselves from the work they did if they wasn't appreciated or the way a story was handled. So a reporter always has sort of a love-hate sort of crowd. It's always love-hate. It's one or the other. Mm-hmm. Depends.
Because if they don't like the story you're reporting on, they'll take it out on you, right?
They see the name and they think that you've pick those people to quote just because you believe that as well. So they attach the what other people are saying in the story to your beliefs just because your name's at the top, right? So they get that sometimes unfairly, for sure.
I'm really enjoying some of the feedback we're getting, and I'm encouraging people to provide feedback because we do read it. And like Rod Bills, you actually profiled it in the newsletter the other week. When we were talking about consultants, the DTSAB consultant that didn't consult any of the people regarding it. And Rod actually came in and defended that person.
Well, yeah, he wanted to make sure that people understood the process. It was not the necessarily the consultant's fault if he wasn't given the direction to consult. Right? That would be in the contract. He was hired as an advisor. That's what Rob was saying, more so. And then you would instruct that advisor on how to consult if that was in the contract. So it's possibly that the report was written without clear direction that there should have been consultation. That's what Rod was saying. And quite rightfully, and it was great. It was great to have that.
Yeah. It was great. In that same article, you actually, and I don't know if you were trying to agitate me or not, but in the same article, you had a picture, you had an old postcard of City Hall when it was first opened. It looked beautiful. All the windows matched.
Well, it's funny. I saw that posted in one of the Facebook groups. You're from North Bay, if you remember this, or something like that. And the people that were commenting under it were going, "Oh yeah, I remember the building was built." And I said, "Oh, look, the windows match." And then a whole bunch of people commented.
Okay, so it's not just me, the people that...
Oh, no, yeah. But some people... I think you're the most vehemently opposed to it.
But there's a lot of people that don't mind it?
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, it's like
ridiculous.
The least of their worries. And they think it looks not so bad, right?
The way I look at it is it's like the old Van Halen Eminem story. and I think I've told you this one,
Yes.
right? Where everybody thought it was about rock and roll vanity, that they had to have the brown M&Ms taken out of their bowl of M&Ms before they started a concert. And it was like, oh, that's, the vanity and ridiculousness of a rock star. But it actually wasn't. The story behind it was when Van Halen was moving to smaller venues and they weren't able to take all the same people, and they had, huge pyrotechnics and electrical issues and different things. And the way the band knew that all the things were covered in the contract was in the rider, they would put something really obscure like take all the brown M&Ms out. And they knew when they went into the studio or went into the dressing room before a show and all the brown M&Ms were gone, that they actually followed the contract. So it was more about the safety issues on stage and less about the vanity. And so when I look at when you miss details like that, it's like, what other details are you missing? What other things are you skipping over? What are the...
I love it when someone has an opinion, even if it's,
wrong?
Small potatoes.
Very
Right?
small potatoes.
Yeah, we all have these things. I love it.
But it's more of what are the other details. Hey, we have former Chief Scott McLeod joining us in the studios. You've known him for a long time.
I've known him for a long time. I actually met him when I was working for the Union of Ontario Indians, and he was, I think, just coming off working for the MNR, and he was working for the Nishnawbek Ontario Fishers Resource Centre.
Okay.
And they had an office in the basement of the South Wing, where the newspaper, Nishnawbek News, was being put out. So I knew him, and also I knew him through the family, like Perry McLeod and I go way back. His wife, Lori, I went to school with her at college. So I had a good chance to meet with the McLeods, good people, love them all. They've been good, long friends.
And, I've enjoyed his leadership, not just during this time as chief, but he's been, a real advocate for the community for most of his life. And I don't think that's going to end as this part of his political career.
I think this is
evolving.
just the first stage of his political career, 9 years as community chief.
Yeah.
And he can do a lot of things. He's young.
I'd love to see him in other spaces, like in leadership roles for the Anishinaabe. So let's get to this interview, and we welcome Scott into the studios.
This weekend, make your way to Casey's Restaurant in North Bay for an unforgettable get-together. Dive into our delicious appetizers and enjoy the best drafts in town. It's the perfect spot to unwind, catch up with friends, and savor great flavors. Don't miss out on the fun. Join us at Casey's for a weekend filled with good food, great drinks, and even better company.
Today we have a special guest, former Chief Scott McLeod Shabogesic. Thanks for coming to the studio.
Well, you're welcome, and I'm glad to be here.
You had a good run, Nipissing First Nation leadership, 9 years, was it?
9 years, yeah, 3 terms.
Yeah, and it's been a roller coaster of a lot of things going on, a lot of big issues. You've been on the national stage a few times. How's it feel to be out of it?
Well, I mean, it generally speaking feels good. 9 years of responsibilities piled on your shoulders. You tend to adjust and learn to carry that. But once it's gone, it's a really enlightening experience to have those responsibilities gone. However, I'm still quite active in some of the higher level politics in First Nations. A lot of the Indigenous organizations want me to stick around and do work for them when it comes to advocacy for First Nations on various issues. So I'm still working with the Anishinaabe Nation, the Chiefs of Ontario, and wherever I'm needed. My passion is to continue pushing First Nation issues in this country and making things better in our communities.
Over the last 9 years, I've physically seen a lot of changes happen for Nipissing First Nation. Tell us about that run. Tell us about when you came in, maybe some of the things you wanted to do, some of the challenges of, getting it there or getting it across the finish line, and, things you're super proud of. And
when I became chief in 2015, there was lots to do. We certainly did have a lot of challenges. One of the things that the first challenges I was faced with was, our own First Nation kind of needing to grow, needing to adapt to a lot of the things that we were doing. We had a lot of work on our plate that was set, by my the chiefs that came before me and the councils that came before me, and we were really outgrowing, the work that we had in front of us, and we had to expand. So one of the things that I did was to separate the administration from the higher level political stuff, which meant reorganizing the structure of our administration. At the time, we had Dwayne Nashqua as our CEO, who did everything, from A to Z, and it was really straining on him because we were growing. We had a lot of business opportunities that we were capitalizing on, and it just became too much to do both that and the day-to-day, and so we changed the structure to allow for another position where we would have the CEO plus. We moved Dwayne over to a more of a political advisory role to guide us on that higher level stuff, and we took in Brendan Houston, who's now our CEO, to concentrate more on the administration stuff. And what that did was allowed us to really work on some of those bigger picture plans because we were kind of stalling. We had all these things we wanted to do, but we were running out of human capacity to actually do that work. And so that allowed us the room to take things to the next level and start working on some of those bigger projects like Nipissing Miller, our partnership there, and Beasing Power, and a lot of these business ventures that we were getting into, because one of the things that I've always said and we've kind of strived for is that, if we truly want sovereignty, then we have to have sovereign wealth. We have to have income sources that are not contingent upon government restrictions or whatever they stipulate, because we'll never be sovereign if we're dependent on government. So that's where we're heading now and into the future. So it was a big step to make that change administratively.
I've worked with the Anishinaabe Nation, especially the Land and Resources Forum, for a number of years. And one of the things I've seen over that time is something you touched on. It was really interesting, is about capacity. And what's interesting is and these are in 40 First Nations across the province, and there's these really bright technical people that are working within each First Nation, and then the government comes and actually hires them away. So it's really interesting about capacity of people within a community, and then how they're scooped out to work for the government, and that must be a challenge in itself.
Well, it is, especially if you're dependent on government funds to run your administration, which are typically underfunded. So you can't pay, those positions the same as they would be, off reserve. Mm-hmm. So you're hamstrung by that. So that all comes back to the sovereign wealth. Like, if you're bringing in money outside of government funds, then you can compete to keep those people in those positions by having salaries that reflect, what they could be getting out there. So then most of our people want to stay home and want to work there, but they have to do what's best for their family. So if what's best for their family is earning more income that they can attain out there, that's the problem, right? So we try to augment that with our own resources that we have coming in from our businesses to be able to build our nation, from the inside out.
I've physically seen incredible amount of growth. When you travel the highway between here and Sturgeon, you can see there's a lot of building and growth happening all along from North Bay to Sturgeon. So tell us about that and how that came about. We haven't seen that same type of growth in North Bay.
Yeah, so it's really, there's really two sides to that, right? One is the First Nation itself, who's reinvesting in our own nation to create that local economy, to attract other businesses to come in and utilize some of because we have a lot of land, right? So we got to develop that and attract those businesses in, so that we can essentially have more sources of income to the nation. But also our entrepreneurs have been really taking advantage and expanding within our community, which is a great improvement from where we were before. It's not like cigarette shacks or it's actual big established businesses that are creating a lot of job and income into our communities, right? So we're building that economy both in the private sector and from the government, the chief and council level. We just saw Tim Hortons open up recently at the Wolf's Den. We have Gen 7. We have these big businesses that are employing a lot of our people and creating wealth within the nation as well. So it's all the way around. It's good, and it's something that was our vision to create that economy and expand and create opportunities for our band members.
Scott, one of the big ticket items that you've been involved with in the last little while was the Robinson Huron Treaty Annuity case, and the checks are just now going out to community members, and it's a big thing on Facebook. A lot of people are talking about it. It was a factor in your not being elected this time. Tell us about that and how you feel about what's taken place with the annuity situation.
So you're correct. I've been involved in the annuities case since 2015. It wasn't a big known ticket item in 2015. Our band members didn't even know about it. But it was something that had been worked on for a couple of years previous to me going in as chief. But the real potential was there. Even in 2015, we didn't know how much we were dealing with. We knew it was potentially could be a large scale. We didn't really know how large that would be. The distribution agreement was done in 2012 amongst the First Nations without knowing how much money was on the table. So it was difficult back then to determine how that should look. But we worked through that part. But as we continued through the case, we realized, we had a rock solid case that we had all the confidence that we were going to win this case. And so, by 2019, I think somewhere around there, we were able to get Canada, because there was both Canada and the province were involved in this, even though the treaty was between the Crown and our First Nations. The province was involved because they delegated all the authority and all the land to the provinces. So they held the wealth of our territory, right? But Canada was obligated through the treaty to participate. So we had both levels of government there, and Canada saw the writing on the wall right away, and so they were ready to negotiate by 2020, and Ontario was reluctant, and so they appealed, and it went through that whole process for the next couple of years after that, in which case they started to see they lost their appeal, and they brought it to the Supreme Court, and it was looking the same. So they finally said, okay, we're ready to negotiate. Negotiations started at a very, very low amount compared to what the settlement was. But we were more confident than ever. And so we had the legal team, we had the litigation management committee, which had some of our chiefs on there, which was established before I became chief. And so we started to negotiate, and this was all done behind closed doors. I was chosen as one of the chiefs to work with the negotiation litigation management team to basically be the conduit or the go-between between the group of chiefs and the legal team and the litigation management committee. So there was a lot of, I was more or less rounding up chiefs and saying, okay, this is, let's hold out on these numbers, or let's, here's what we want to go for. So we went from basically, I think it was the initial offer of $2 billion to basically to where we got to today. And it was a bit of
which is a $10 billion split up between 21 communities?
$5 billion from the province, $5 billion from Canada. So that's where we got it to. But from where we started to, it was a bit of a work to get us there. There was some chiefs that were ready to say, yeah, let's do it now. And, so there was people like myself that were in there and saying, no, let's hold on. We can get more. Till finally we got to a point where we said, I think this is it. This is as far as we can push.
And a real quick snapshot of what that $10 billion represents is what was owed that wasn't paid because they didn't increase the annuity over the years like they said they would when they could.
Yeah, so in layperson terms, the
and this is for resources mining.
It's from all resources from the land, right?
Okay.
Because they didn't know there was going to be big open pit mines or any of that stuff, but they knew, the chiefs knew there was a lot of value in our territory. Mm-hmm. And at the time, in 1850, the Crown was basically broke, that coming here, they didn't have a lot of money. And we said, that's okay. We'll make this deal. And as your revenues increase, so will ours, right? That was the promise. And so they started out paying the initial amount of money, which was British currency. I think it was 600 pounds or something like that. But so the chiefs would take that, and I think it was increased once in somewhere around 1860 or 1857, somewhere around there. But then it was never increased again. And our chiefs petitioned and were upset about that, but it just fell on deaf ears. And by 1867. When Confederation happened, there was no longer any appeals to the Crown. It was basically Canada and the First Nations. And then we got like zero attention on the issues of the treaty at that time. But what's really, really interesting about this whole thing was there was never any individual payment, right? It was a lump sum that was paid to the nations. The individual payment came out of surplus money that after the chiefs had taken care of communal needs, and at the time it could have been, salt and flour and ammunitions or nets or whatever they needed to get them through the year. They had a surplus, and then they said, well, let's distribute this to the people. And that's where the $4 came from.
So it actually came from the community,
It
not
came
from the
community. Right? But then how we were cheated two ways. One, was they didn't increase the amount coming to our nations, but the other one was that the Crown said, well, this is costing us too much administratively. We're going to administer the funds ourselves instead of passing it to chiefs. So all they did was they just started paying the individuals $4 a year. So there was the community was robbed of all their money to get them through the year, and the individuals were given $4. So that's why, flash forward, 174 years later, people in our community think that the annuity payment is all theirs, right? And that's why everybody was saying 100%, 100%. We, because you never took any from us before, but it was the government that set this up and made it, very difficult for us to even maintain. Some communities had a hard time maintaining 10% of that, right? And the full intention of the treaty was based on a collective to make everybody prosper and not just to give individual payments.
So I understand, Scott, because I always learn different stuff all the time. And so when we talk about the deal, the sharing deal, would that be one bowl, two spoons? Is that the wampum?
Well, no, that was inter-treaty, but it was based essentially on that premise, right? Yeah. That we can both live in a territory, and there's enough to go around to allow, so nobody starves. So that
when we talk about Crown land, and this was actually in the last session, I think you were the one that taught me this. He says, you said there isn't Crown land, right?
Yes.
It's treaty land.
It's treaty land.
Right. And so what we're talking about here is that way back 1850, it's like, okay, you don't have money, we're going to share in the abundance. And so that when mining and forestry and all these things are happening on treaty land, we're going to share in it. Mm-hmm. And we agree. Shake hands, we agree. It just never happened.
No, it was just...
And that's what this is about.
It was an assumption of jurisdiction, right? It was just, they said, okay, we got the treaty signed, now it's Crown land, now it's ours. But that was never the intention.
Right.
There was we didn't, give up title to the land. We didn't give up any of our rights, through this treaty. We were basically willing to share, mm-hmm. and that we were taken advantage of.
And that's
I mean, there's no other way to put it, really, right? It was that's how European, society made deals. They cheated each other.
When someone said to me in the different things I was learning that $2 to $5 that was, for over 100 years being doled out was really what held. It allows me to have my little square of property, right? Because through the Robinson Huron Treaty, mm-hmm. and I think I had said to someone, "Hey, anytime you want to renegotiate that, I'm sure our First Nation community will absolutely renegotiate that if you don't." So this is part of that renegotiation and.
Absolutely. And, I've had, even friends say to me, well, that's, you guys lost the war. And I'm like, what war? This was a peaceful negotiation.
Yeah.
And, what's bringing this all back is the Crown's own rule of law, right? Right back from, the Royal Proclamation to the Treaty of Niagara to the Treaty of 1850, Robinson Huron. All of that, all of their law systems are founded on those declarations, right? On how the treaty process was supposed to happen. So we're catching them up in their own laws and making them accountable based on their own laws. So.
North Bay Echo is proud to partner with Twigg's Coffee Roasters, a part of the community since 1995. Twiggs offers a wide selection of quality beans, fresh roasted in-house every day. Find your favorite specialty drinks at our espresso bar, rejuvenate with freshly squeezed juice, or treat yourself to mouth-watering selections from our gourmet deli. And don't forget our irresistible fresh baked goods, including uncompromising gluten-free options. Twiggs has 5 locations to serve you, from North Bay to Sturgeon Falls to Sudbury. Order online for pickup at twigs.ca. And coming soon, you'll be able to order fresh roasted coffee beans direct to your doorstep from our distribution center in North Bay.
There's a lot of talk about a lot of rich First Nation members right now getting checks and spending it. What is the amount people are getting, and what is the split with the community at the moment?
So the split is like we're 25% is staying within the community to work towards future generations, but also present generations too. I mean, that money's going to start working for elder care and medical care and things that aren't provided necessarily from government. Yeah, fill those gaps. The individual amounts are based on your age, because the annuity payment is a yearly payment. When you're compensating for something that wasn't done right, you really have to break it down to, okay, well, if you're getting compensated for something and it was a yearly payment, how many yearly payments are you being compensated for? Right? So it didn't make sense for a 1-year-old to get the same as a 90-year-old, because a 90-year-old suffered 90 years, whereas a 1-year-old was only, has 1 year of compensation owing to them. There was a bit of an outcry with that, and that is kind of what led to, I'm guessing, my not getting reelected, was that a lot of people wanted more, but a lot of people wanted every single person to get the exact same amount. But that was contradictory to, the treaty and the compensation and the compensation agreement. So what we did was we said, okay, well, if we're going to treat everybody equal, let's give everybody a $20,000 base amount. So everybody, whether you're 1 or you're 90, and then we came up with a figure on, well, based on the 75%, how much money we had. How much you get on a yearly basis. So for our community, it's around $2,800 for times your age, right, that you get compensated. And that's a lot of money, but for some people, wasn't enough. Like, they felt they deserved or were entitled to more. Myself, I think it should have been flipped around. I think the community should have got 75%, and individuals, 25% is pretty good. But considering how the treaty was written, I think that was more fitting. Politically, it wasn't. So, but I understand it. I mean, when you starve a nation for 174 years and then you throw all that money on the table, what do you think's going to happen, right? So people want to look after themselves and their families.
But something you touched on, which is really important about the generational effect, and again, I'm learning all the time. It's actually, so if I'm on reserve, if I'm First Nation, I'm living on reserve. To actually borrow money to build a house is virtually impossible. And I don't know how many white people know that, right? Like, you have to live off reserve to get like a mortgage and things like that, because you don't have collateral. Like, there's this generational challenge that's happened and continues today, which is all based on the Indian Act.
Correct.
It is a massive problem. It wasn't hard for me to get a mortgage, but I'm not on reserve. I'm white. Yeah. I'm not on reserve, and I can. But it's very, very different on reserve.
Absolutely. And up until about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, people would say, oh, you go down the reserve and like the houses look crappy and, they're all just shoe boxes. And that's because we didn't have access to those kinds of things. I don't know how many people, regular citizens of Ontario or Canada have enough money in their account just to go and pay for a house cash.
Yeah.
Nobody. Virtually nobody.
Yeah.
We were the same. But we didn't have access to bank loans, mortgages, because the banks couldn't repossess
land.
Our because it was federal land. It was reserve land. So therefore, they wouldn't lend us money. Today, we have very limited access to mortgages with the banks. I think the maximum is $350,000. I mean, I don't know. You can't build very much for $350,000. So when you see these really nice houses going up, that's our band members putting their own money into their, above and beyond $350,000.
And this challenge is the same for even entrepreneurs, because we talked early in this conversation about entrepreneurs. So if I want to buy or lease a backloader or whatever it happens to be, that's very, very difficult for an entrepreneur because they can't get the loan for it.
And the thing is too, the banks are willing to, work with the First Nations on these loans because the First Nations have to guarantee the loan. So we're taking, I think it's about 75% of the risk on, say, a $350,000 mortgage is on the band.
Huh.
But all of the interest goes to the bank.
You don't get a cut of it, even though you're taking the risk.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We got about 5 more minutes, and I want to make sure we touch upon some of the things that you feel important to say at this sort of exit interview from your community level leadership. One thing I wanted to ask is about the new chief, and tell us about her and how you think she's appropriate for the job right now.
So I've known Cathy for a long time. I consider her a friend and colleague. I've worked with her. She sat on council while I was chief for a term a few years back. And we had discussions going into the election, and she fully supported the work that I was doing. And so I was really relieved because there's a lot of stuff that I didn't want to see unraveling after I left. She had been supporting me 100% going into this, and because of the RHT annuities stuff, and people were like, it was just getting a little bit crazy in our communities, and the politics, it was getting very unstable. There was, not in our community, but there was other communities that people were getting in based on 100% payout, quickly realizing after they got in that they couldn't do it. But Cathy didn't. She didn't believe in that either. She believed in carrying on from where I left off, and she wanted, to give another option if people were upset because of the RHT with me, that there would be some a smooth transition and not any abrupt change. So I'm pretty confident in Cathy. I think she's got some challenges. Every leader does. But I think it worked out well, and I support her 150%. I've told her that personally. Willing to work with her if she needs any advice, because at the end of the day, if you're truly in this for community, then you got to leave your ego at the door. And this is about, my job, not only as a chief, but my job as a former chief to continue our community moving forward. There's an obligation there that I feel strongly about, that I've got to keep that transition going. However, one of the things that I've said on social media, and I'll say it again, is that reflecting back on the election and reflecting on the treaty and what our leaders did for us back in 1850, and they were thinking of us. I would think that, that was 174 years ago. 174 years from now, I want to be thought of as the leader who thought of, those generations ahead, who fought to keep money for them in the future and lost an election because of it, rather than being thought of as a leader who gave it all away just to get reelected. So that's how strongly I feel. I live by the sword, die by the sword. That's the kind of leader I want to be remembered as. And if it meant change in leadership, then so be it. I feel good about, having maintained some amount of money for for our community. I wish it was more, but that was the challenge. I did my best, and I think I'll be looked at positively, in the future as somebody who thought of future generations and, stuck his neck out for them. So.
Well, you did tackle some really hefty issues, and there's been a lot of progress in Nipissing First Nation, gone through the resource management. At this other level, though, and real quickly, if you don't mind, are you still involved with the advocacy against what the governments did in the agreements with the Métis of Ontario?
Absolutely. I'm still involved with that. I still work with the Chiefs of Ontario. As a spokesperson on those issues, I don't know of, there's a few chiefs that I work with, but I don't know of anybody that knows more than the small group that we were working with. And it's not just about being a community chief, but just a leader in certain areas. And I think that's recognized by the chiefs in Ontario, not the organization, but the actual chiefs. And, they want somebody in the forefront that knows the issues and can stand up and advocate for our communities.
Well, you've done well in your growth as a chief. I've known you before that and during it. And I know with the Anishinaabe Nation and the other nations is that once a chief, always a chief, and always on duty. So I wish you well going forward. Thank you for sharing what you did today. And maybe we'll have you in again on when there's something to do. We definitely need to have Cathy in for an interview and help share her vision with the community.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for everything you have done for the community and other communities. We benefit when Nipissing does well too, right? So,
absolutely.
And your relationship, I think, has been very strong with the leadership in North Bay, and just want to thank you for. There's not a lot of people who put 9 years of their life right on out front like that, and I can't even imagine the whole RTH. Did I say that right? RHT negotiations and what had to happen. Like when you're affecting money in people's pockets, like it gets really personal really fast.
Yes,
right?
For sure.
So good for you.
And not to mention COVID during
COVID, yes, yeah, COVID.
That was we can talk, an entire show about that one, but that'll be for some
Are you
time.
ever looking a lot like your dad?
Well, that's a compliment.
Yeah, for sure. It's like a mirror image. Anyways, thank you again.
All right, miigwech.
You've been listening to another Echo Essentials podcast.
I'm Scott Clark.
And I'm Dave Dale. Thanks for liking, sharing, and commenting. We appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Ben, podcast producer here at North Bay Echo, and the Echo Essentials newsletter is a great way to get all of the news and events that are happening in the North Bay area, and of course all the newest podcast episodes in one neat package. And it's very easy to sign up, and you can get subscribed in a few simple steps. So first, you're going to want to head on over to northbayecho.ca. While you're on the home page, you'll see some of the shows that we offer, but we want to keep scrolling down to this panel right here, and you can see there is a box to type in an email address for the Echo Essentials newsletter. So all you have to do is type in your email, make sure to check the box below. And what this will allow us to do is to send you the newsletter to your email. And of course, your info, as always, is protected by your privacy policy. Hit sign me up and you are good to go. You are officially a subscriber of the Echo Essentials newsletter. If you do want to check out our past newsletters as well, you can hit the past newsletter option to go right there, or you can just hit the newsletter tab at the top of the page. And now you can see all of the past newsletters that have been published. And there you have it. Super easy and simple. And now every Tuesday and Thursday, you will get Echo Essentials right to your inbox.